flashed over the United States yesterday and on into outer space, probably never to return. Havana. The Cuban capital is still on guard 24 hours a day against the long-expected rising in Havana itself, which has never materialized. London. Karl Namestnik, 38-year-old Austrian schoolmaster of Styria, crossed the English Channel yesterday on a pair of water skis.
Voilà, mademoiselle. Votre chambre.
Merci, monsieur. Bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit, mademoiselle.
These lights. At least from a French hotel, you'd expect something a bit better. I couldn't imagine Paris. Now I can't even imagine Greenwich Village. Another week here. Another week on the sea. Then back home to New York. Maybe the trip back across the ocean will help me get adjusted again. Where's that program? SS de Grasse. Commandant Jules Chabot. 8h45 à 9h45. Au Grand Salon. Concert sous la direction de Monsieur David, violoniste. Vendredi 11 septembre 1931. Programme. Martha. Ouverture. Flotto. Romance en fa. Tchaikovsky. danse norvégienne numéro 3, Greek. La Navarraise, Massenet. At 10 p.m. in the Salon de Thé, dancing. That's strange. The dancing's in English.
Se glisser dans ton ombre à la faveur de la nuit. Suivre tes pas, ton ombre à la fenêtre. Cette ombre à la fenêtre, c'est toi. Ce n'est pas un autre. C'est toi. N'ouvre pas cette fenêtre. Ferme les yeux.
The group theater, which has been rehearsing through the summer at Dover Furnace, New York, feels that its first production of the season will be ready for local showing about the third week in September. Rome. Benito Mussolini has come to the conclusion that neither the existing Marcia Reale nor the fascist fighting song Giovinezza is good enough to be counted as the Italian national hymn. New York. An estimated 25,000 theatergoers, actors, directors, stagehands, the majority in New York, are displaced by the effects of the Depression.
I don't want to hurt him. But I just need to work and live together with the group theater. If we have a relationship offstage, won't that be reflected in our work? Sunday night. People are still going out, enjoying themselves in cinemas and theaters. But how could I go to the movies tonight to see Scarface? I'm scared enough of reality as it is. Should I feel guilty? Weekends don't exist for journalists. He even worked today. How does he manage to enjoy himself, being confronted day after day with the most horrible stories, based on other people's fate? People like our neighbor. Every morning he leaves the house with his briefcase, pretending to go to work as usual. And then I see him standing in one of those bread lines, waiting for leftover food. In his gray suit, his tie removed. Theater should deal with the tragedy of daily life, not the other way around. It's not because of him that I'm moving out.
It's the farthest place I've ever been. It's a new frontier for me. And you balance things like you wouldn't believe, when you should just let things be. Yes, you juggle things 'cause you can't lose sight of the wretched storyline. It's the narrative that must go on until the end of time. And you're guilty of some self-neglect, and the mind unravels for days. I've told you once, yes, 1,000 times, I'm better off this way. I'm better off this way.
preparations for Danzig's defense have been completed, and the city is now awaiting events tense but calm, despite the fact that almost all believe war between Poland and Germany is imminent. Paris. It is not the British cabinet alone that will sit today to decide the answer to Chancellor Hitler. New York. Cooling northeast winds brought relief to the city yesterday after 27 days of high temperatures and high humidity.
Before I crack your face again. Get out of here.
I'd kill the guy for looking at me the way you are now.
Yeah. You're a killer, all right. You're a murderer. You're a butcher, sure. Why don't you leave me forget you? Ain't I got troubles enough with the cops? Newspapers bother me. Johnny and Martha.
What's the matter with them?
None of your business. Just leave us alone. You never brought nothing but trouble. Just stay away and leave us alone and die. But leave us alone.
I prefer the role of an usherette. Hollywood films with social content. How perverse. $165,000 for the film rights. Paid right after Samuel Goldwyn saw Sidney Kingsley's Dead End at the Belasco Theater. Eleanor Roosevelt came to see us 3 times. She even made the first command performance in the White House. Presented at the request of the president. Stars, stars, stars. Hollywood is a dead end. Everybody comes back. Like Clifford. After waiting for Lefty and Awake and Sing, Hollywood offered $4,000 a week. He resisted at first, but then Paradise Lost ran into trouble at the box office. So he went. A communist in Hollywood. A screenwriter doesn't have to sacrifice art and ideas for his work. People can be given a sense of problems, a heightened perception of life, and at the same time be entertained and even gripped. Nonsense. Hollywood corrupts people. Good thing he came back. Golden Boy was back to the roots. And successful. But now it starts again. 2 failures and financial problems are enough. And then the cohesiveness of the group begins to crumble. Hollywood is calling again. Or even worse, we are calling Hollywood. Please send some more stars. Send Sylvia Sidney. We need her to enhance box office appeal. Where are the fundamental ideals? I had to leave the group. I prefer the role of an usherette.
No.
What's the matter? I ain't good enough for you.
Oh, no, it ain't that.
You know, Francie, I never forgot you.
Oh, go on, you with all your fancy beans. Where do I come up?
They don't mean nothing.
That chorus girl, what's her name?
Nothing. She ain't got nothing. None of them have. You remember that night on the roof?
Yeah, I remember. The sky was full of stars, and I was full of dreamy ideas.
Yeah. Me too.
couple of crazy kids. We were gonna get married. I bought a ring at the Fine and Dime store.
Yeah, only we didn't have money enough to buy the license. Remember? Gee, it seems like yesterday. We were talking about it right here.
Yesterday. Seems like a million years.
New York. The United States Army Transport American Legion is scheduled to dock at the Army base in South Brooklyn at 1 p.m. today, carrying 897 refugees from the war zones of Europe. Mexico City. Leon Trotsky's body was reduced to ashes yesterday afternoon in the crematorium attached to the Pantheon Civil Cemetery. London. Heavy German raids on various objectives in England were carried on with hardly a pause into yesterday's night. London suffered its most prolonged attack of the war.
She's gone for a snack and a drink with her boss. Right now, they were sitting in this bar on the corner of Broadway and 52nd Street, talking to the Polish barkeeper. The subject was, as always and everywhere in those days, the war in Europe. Already a year ago, the invasion of Poland. When the New York World's Fair reopened this spring, the Polish and Czech pavilions were gone. And on the 25th of June, the flag of the French pavilion was flying at half-mast. Paris had fallen into the hands of Hitler. That's her boss. They just returned from the bar. She's in the bathroom reapplying her lipstick, getting ready for the next scene as the secretary in this play. Newspapers never sleep. Steve has been telling me this for the last 10 years. Good thing they put me in the advertising department, so I don't have to deal with any kind of crime story or social drama. I simply get too emotional. A result of the method acting, I guess. We even took the jobs of the protagonists of our plays to study their real experiences, to get into their moods and emotions. And now here in this office, working as a secretary, I feel like I'm preparing for a new role.
London. It was disclosed today that secret new anti-aircraft guns will meet any large-scale resumption of German air attacks against Britain this winter. Washington. The American people may be asked to observe one meatless day a week in the near future to save shipping space needed for the movement of war weapons to fighting fronts, President Roosevelt said today. Moscow. While General Gregory K. Zhukov's offensive west of Moscow continued to meet with success, the grim battle for Stalingrad grew in ferocity.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Could you please call a taxi?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
To the theater?
Yes,
Good
to
evening.
the Schubert Theater.
Hello? New Haven Hotel? A taxi, please. To the theater. Yes. Schubert Theater. Thank you. It'll come soon, sir.
Thank you. It'll be here soon, hopefully.
Excelsior, New Jersey. The home of Mr. George Antrobus, the inventor of the wheel. Excelsior, New Jersey. The home of Mr. George Antrobus, the inventor of the wheel. This is his home, a commodious seven-room house conveniently situated near Plymouth School, a Methodist church, and a firehouse. It is right handy to A and P. This is his home, a commodious seven-room house, conveniently situated near a public school, a Methodist church, and a firehouse. It is right handy to A and P. Mr. Antrobus himself. He comes of very old stock and has made his way up from next to nothing. Mr. Antrobus is a veteran of foreign wars and bears a number of scars, front and back. Mr. Antrobus is a veteran of foreign wars and bears a number of scars, front and back. This is Mrs. Antrobus, the charming and gracious president of the Excelsior Mothers Club. Mrs. Antrobus is an excellent needlewoman. It is she who invented the apron, on which so many interesting changes have been rung since. So many interesting changes have been rung.
You shouldn't stare at her legs. It's embarrassing.
I was looking
So many
for the
interesting
taxi.
changes have been rung since. Oh. 6 o'clock and the master not home yet. Pray God nothing serious has happened to him crossing the Hudson River. The fact is, I don't know what'll become of us. Here it is the middle of August and the coldest day of the year. It's simply freezing. Dogs are sticking to the sidewalks. Can nobody explain that? No. But I'm not surprised. The whole world's at 6s and 7s. And why the house hasn't fallen down around... And why the house hasn't fallen down about... And why the house hasn't fallen down about our ears long ago is a miracle to me.
You should be ashamed at your age.
I didn't do anything to be ashamed of.
In the midst of life
We are in the midst of death. A truer word has never been spoken.
Mr. and Mrs. Antrobus are just opposite, waiting for a taxi to take them to the theater where I'm going to play their maid Sabina in 2 months' time.
We'll miss the beginning.
I don't know why the woman is wearing a fur.
We've plenty of time.
It's the end of August.
But I had to hurry.
But it suits the text of the play. And I can hear the dinosaur and the mammoth. We've managed to survive for some time now. Catch as catch can. The fat and the lean. And if the dinosaurs don't trample us to death, and if the grasshoppers don't eat up our garden, we'll all live to see better days. Knock on wood.
Here it is. Let's go.
We've rattled along, hot and cold, for some time now.
And my advice to you is not to inquire into why or whither, but just enjoy your ice cream while it's on your plate. That's my philosophy.
Senator Richard M. Nixon, Republican vice presidential nominee, released today details of his September campaign tour that will take him into 16 states. Washington. The Senate Internal Security Subcommittee released a report yesterday charging that the Radio Writers Guild is dominated by a small number of communists. Seoul. Navy planes hurled heavy attacks at communist power plants in northeast Korea Wednesday, while Air Force superforts and light bombers followed at night with 3 hammer blows in the west.
Should I seek professional help? Steve says so. No sleep all night. But I know the reason anyway. Judith was chasing the fire inspector down Commerce Street with a bamboo spear from the theater. He closed the shows. He insisted that Julian's sets are dangerously flammable. Nonsense. The closing of the heroes in Ubuhua is just an attempt to contain us. The living theaters bohemian influence. The Un-American Activities virus, spreading across the country, infecting people, threatening them, forcing them to confess, to betray colleagues. Who'll be the next to name names? It's horrible to suspect close friends as informers. But who would have dared to think of Gaj, Elia Kazan, as a rat? And then he took out an ad in the New York Times to defend himself and to encourage others to do the same. I think it is useful that certain of us had this kind of experience with the communists, for if we had not, we should not know them so well. First-hand experience of dictatorship and thought control left me with an abiding hatred of these. It left me with an abiding hatred of communist philosophy and methods, and the conviction that these must be resisted always. The motion pictures I have made and the plays I have chosen to direct represent my convictions. Elia Kazan. Was this the same man who played the taxi driver in Waiting for Lefty, who held up his fist at the end and yelled "strike" as the audience yelled "strike" right back at him? Was this the same man who directed The Skin of Our Teeth with me as Sabina in New Haven 10 years ago? Or the man who had a hard-won reputation for actually caring about the social content of his work? Who even in his Hollywood films tackled difficult issues like discrimination and revolution? And now the closing of the Cherry Lane Theater. It's too much. We had such great performances. John Cage. Where are we going to play in the future? In the streets. That's all we do. Always beginning again. Over and over.
Eisenhower ended a 4-day golfing idyll by the Pacific and returned to the White House and politics today. New York. The first national convention of the Communist Party of the USA since 1950 is to be held in this city next February 9th to the 12th. Bonn. The West German and United States governments have concluded a payments agreement to cover orders for heavy armaments from manufacturers in the United States.
Although I knew the surroundings so well, the park, the trees, the houses, the people, I somehow felt isolated from it. As if I was looking into a diorama at the Museum of Natural History. The one with the bisons and the painted background landscape of Montana. We've never talked about it, but I think we felt the same. As a photographer, he must have been used to this more than me. I didn't know then that soon we'd never be able to share these moments again. These morning rituals. Looking out. Watching together. In silence. I didn't know then that I would have to talk in the future, to put into words what I was seeing, to link my eyes with my brain and my tongue. But as soon as I would name what I was seeing, it would change. Seeing was never the same again. Our ritual always ended with the news. Back to reality.
Nashville. A campaign to intimidate the Negroes who enrolled their children in white schools began here today. Havana. Dr. San Diego Rey, Cuban Minister of the Interior, lifted censorship today on all publications in English entering Cuba from the United States. New York. Today's new film is 3:10 to Yuma, a Columbia Western drama starring Glenn Ford, Fan Heflin, and Felicia Farr at the Astor.
Okay, this looks good, Shirley. We can get started. Turn around and look out the window. Turn your head and look at me. Now, sit down on the bed. Yeah, and look out of the window. All right, look at the door. And look at me.
It was the first time Steve had asked me to pose for him. And it was again the first time I could observe him working behind the camera. It seems strange after knowing each other for such a long time.
Turn your body towards me and put your hand on the bed.
But it simply never happened before. And it would never happen again. He became a stranger to me at that moment, as I might have been for him as well. A woman he wanted to behave and look like the woman he imagined for his photograph. I've experienced this 100 times before with various stage directors. But with Steve, it was different. Tense. Almost erotic. To be treated by the closest person in your life like a stranger, in order to become somebody else, somebody I created, according to his imagination, for him.
Should not dare to leave my friend because if he should die while I was gone and die too late, should reach the heart that wanted me. If I should disappoint the eyes that hunted so to see, and could not bear to shut until they noticed me, they noticed me. If I should stab the patient faith, so sure I'd come, so sure I'd come, and listening when to sleep, telling my tardy name. My heart would wish it broke before, since breaking then, we're useless as next morning's sun, where midnight frosts had lain.
dock workers charged with the theft of 2 CinemaScope lenses valued at $3,500 each from a Brooklyn pier were arraigned in Brooklyn Felony Court yesterday before Magistrate George Rader. London. 2 British scientists have reported the surgical removal and successful regrowth of lenses in the eyes of rabbits. New York. Don't knock the spell of illusion. That's what Sweden's Ingmar Bergman says in the latest of his highly esoteric and technically exquisite films, The Magician. It opened at the Fifth Avenue Cinema yesterday.
Imagine prisoners who have been chained since childhood deep inside a cave. Not only are their limbs immobilized by chains, their heads are as well, so their eyes are fixed on a wall. Chained since childhood deep inside a cave. Behind the prisoners is an enormous fire. And between the fire and the prisoners there is a raised way, along which men carry shapes of various animals, plants, and other things. The shapes cast shadows on the wall, which occupy the prisoners' attention. Also, when one of the shape carriers speaks, an echo against the wall causes the prisoners to believe that the words come from the shadows. The prisoners engage in what appears to us to be a game. A game. Naming the shapes as they come by. This, however, is the only reality that they know, even though they are seeing merely shadows of images.
Suppose a prisoner is released and compelled to stand up and turn around. His eyes will be blinded by the firelight, and the shapes passing will appear less real than their shadows. Similarly, if he is dragged up out of the cave into the sunlight, his eyes will be so blinded that he will not be able to see anything. At first, he will be able to see darker shapes, such as shadows, and only later, brighter and brighter objects. The last object he would be able to see is the sun, which in time he would learn to see as that. This is that provides the seasons and the courses of the year, and presides over all things in the visible region, and is, in some sort, the cause of all these things that they had seen.
The last object he'll be able to see is the sun.
New York. Mayor Wagner and his supporters for his renomination campaigned yesterday through the decaying slums and fresh housing projects of the Lower East Side. Hyannisport. President Kennedy spent a quiet holiday on Cape Cod today. Havana. Industry Minister Ernesto Guevara said today shortages of raw materials and spare parts have forced many factories in Cuba to halt production. He blamed aggression of imperialism for the shortage.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you feeling today? Look to the left. To the right.
only after images. For the rest of his life. Since yesterday. Hospital sounds following me everywhere. All the way from New York. In the car. The whole night. Even in my dreams. When will I get rid of them?
A 28-ton trailer truck with a Dane at the wheel and 2 Czechoslovak refugees in the cab crashed into Austria from Czechoslovakia yesterday by ramming a metal gate at the border. Washington. More than 200,000 Americans, most of them black, but many of them white, demonstrated here today for a full and speedy program of civil rights and equal job opportunities. Pula. Premier Khrushchev and President Tito ended 2 days of official talks on Bryony Island today.
Est-ce que les docteurs vous ont dit quelque chose à propos de votre mémoire? Dites-moi.
Oui. Ils m'ont dit que... Ils ne savaient pas.
Ils ne vous ont laissé aucun espoir de la retrouver un jour. Aucun.
Je ne sais pas.
Et de danser. Vous vous souvenez?
Danser? Danser? Oui, ça peut peut-être aller.
Vous voulez bien?
Intermissions. It's like suddenly waking up from a dream. How would it be to wake up with no memory? To not know who, what, where from. No past. No friends to ask. Just a body without a history. Maybe it's still easier for him than for her. Discovering that her man, who she thought was dead, is alive, but without any memory. He doesn't recognize her. He doesn't believe her. Will it happen again tonight? Steve, lying beside me. I hear him breathing. I smell his body memories of him. Imagination. Maybe it's the room, the furniture, the environment that keeps the memory. I'm glad I'm moving out tomorrow.
Vous voyez, vous dansez très bien.
Oh, vous êtes une gentille femme.
Vous ne vous souvenez pas d'en avoir eu une que vous aimiez? D'avoir été fiancé une fois, loin de Paris. Vous ne vous souvenez pas?
Non.
Et d'avoir été marié une fois à une femme qui s'appelait Thérèse Langlois. Vous ne vous souvenez pas? À Chaulieu, Chaulieu-sur-Loire.
from WGBH 89.7 with the morning edition of our broadcast yesterday of the Civil Rights March as part of the Educational Radio Network. some of the highlights of the events. Let's start with a song that expresses best the feeling and the mood that brought together 250,000 people in front of the Lincoln Memorial.
Will that be all, ma'am? What's with the radio?
The radio.
Should I take it?
No thanks. You can leave it. I'll carry it with me in the car. I'll follow you in a minute. We'll meet in Cape Cod. Thank you.
What an experience. Singing in front of 250,000 people. Singing and fighting with them. Should I go to Europe? Join the Living Theater again? Trade the stage for the streets of Rome, Paris, London? Be with the people in the streets.
Joan Baez yesterday afternoon in front of the Lincoln Memorial.
I need some time.
And now the words of a speech that made the headlines of today's
First,
newspapers. The words
Cape
of
Cod.
Reverend Martin Luther King.
Then I'll see.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood? I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, may transform into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
John F. Kennedy Airport. Another 3 days in New York. Then, Rome. My new life. Together with the Living Theater again. Working with Luigi Nono on his new piece. dedicated to the Viet Cong. Traveling on a train. Like living in a dream. An in-between state. The past is gone. The future is yet to come. A bright, faraway light. It is a fact that one never sees the sun in a dream, although one often is aware of a brighter, faraway light. Wasn't that a French poet? What was his name? He went insane. The other passengers, sharing the same space and time, the same dream. So close and yet so distant. If anybody's friend be dead, it's sharpest of the theme, the thinking how they walked alive at such and such a time. Their costume of a Sunday, some manner of the hair, a prank nobody knew but them, lost in the sepulchre. How warm they were on such a day. You almost feel the date. So short way off it seems, and now they're centuries from that.
It's the farthest place I've ever been. It's a new frontier for me. And you balance things like you wouldn't believe, when you should just let things be. Yes, you juggle things 'cause you can't lose sight of the wretched storyline. It's the narrative that must go on until the end of time. And you're guilty of some self-neglect, and the mind unravels for days. I've told you once, yes, 1,000 times, I'm better off this way. I'm better off this way. Where's my queen of hearts, my royal flush? I have cleaned and scrubbed her decks. My suicide, my better days. There's nothing I regret. I've placed the gods in a Ziploc bag. I've put them in a drawer. They've refused my prayers for the umpteenth time, so I'm evening up the score. Small metal gods from a casting line, from a factory in Mumbai. Some manual laborers, bread and butter, and a single-minded life. Small metal gods, cheap souvenirs, you've abandoned me for sure. I'm dumping you, my childish things. I'm evening up the score.